Welcome to another edition of the podcast, Boots, Bovril and Bother, with Gordon Messino, my
Hello.
very good friend and a colleague in arms, as he is now something of a Portsmouth FC fan, which I am. There are great and profound reasons for Gordon's slight sideways transition from Spurs, his beloved Spurs, to Portsmouth, but we'll get onto that another day. Are you well?
Very well. In fact, going to see said beloved Spurs later on today as they play Leeds in a desperate search for points.
Well, fingers crossed you're safe. But on the other hand, if you make the journey into the Championship, then we'll have some
Good fun.
personal derbies of your own to look forward to. We must do derby football sometime, because they are such bittersweet things, aren't they, with your rivals?
Well, especially as our rivals at the moment look as though they're going to win the league, especially being helped out slightly yesterday by the lovely VAR.
Yes.
But I'm not bitter. I'm definitely
No.
not bitter about it. No.
No. Absolutely not. You came up with a terrific suggestion for something to get the ball rolling this time round, which is, when we were younger, what to do on a Saturday when there was no home game. I like it.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, I was thinking back to Saturdays in the old days before the overload of information we get now. And it would always start with me when Dad had finished with his Daily Express, trying to find out anything about what was going on in the Football League that day. And actually, coverage of football was negligible compared to the reams and reams and reams we get nowadays in the newspapers, let alone on the internet and in whatever other media there is. It was basically...
Sorry about that. My wife wanted a hand with something, and I've explained that I'm doing a Boots podcast.
Okay. It was basically about 4 pages in the sports pages. And, half of those were sort of rugby, racing. Racing got a lot more than it does nowadays. And about a page and a half on what was happening in football. And it was actually spread across all 4 divisions, which was good, which does not happen today. If you read the papers today, you'd be forgiven for thinking nothing existed outside the Premier League. So I'd read the papers, and kind of waiting impatiently for Grandstand to start.
Yes.
Which I think it sort of did about 12 o'clock. David Coleman sort of was always on Grandstand in my youth up till about, I think, the early 70s, when Frank Boff took over. David must have moved on to greater things, Sports Night or whatever it was called, Sports Night with Coleman. Anyway, so Grandstand it was, a little bit of coverage of football, and then, I don't know if you remember this, in 1967, and my memory is not that astonishing, I did go and look this up, but they introduced something called Football Preview.
Yes.
Predecessor to Football Focus. Football Preview, hosted by the great Sam Leach.
Sam Leach, little gingerhead Scotty Sam
Popular
Leach.
figure appearing on our screens in 1967.
Yes.
To give us a preview of what was going on. I think it was about half an hour's preview.
I seem to remember it being a little bit shorter than that.
Okay.
And it left you wanting more.
Yeah.
Because then they would cut to the 10-pin bowling or whatever was the first.
So let's stop there for a second. And what was going on in the Boyd household on a Saturday without going to Fulham or Brentford?
Yeah, well, it varied. Like you, one was aching for Grandstand to start because you saw it as a preamble a build-up, the beginning of a build-up to you finding out the result of your team on the teleprinter,
Teleprinter.
which David Coleman used to do brilliantly, I thought, with that not the microphone that you hold up against your lips so that you don't get the peripheral sound, and it would chatter away,
Yeah.
and you'd see Darlington, Darlington 1, Rochdale 0. And then Coleman will be able to say, that's the third time this season that Darlington have scored a 1-0 win at home, because he stoked himself up with all that information.
But
And
by
it
the
was
way, we should congratulate Rochdale on regaining their place in the Football League, which they did in fairly amazing fashion yesterday. I don't know if you were following it or
I
not.
think that's why they're in my head, yes.
Yeah, I mean, all over by the shouting at 2-0 to Boreham Wood.
Yeah, but
And then back they came and they won on penalties. But anyway, yes. So we leapt ahead slightly to the video printer.
yes. Well, you would have
Sam
to sit
Leach.
through. You'd have to sit through the wrestling, wouldn't you?
Oh, no, well, that was on the other side, wasn't it?
It
That
was,
was
but
the world of
it
sport.
was, yes, but it was compulsory in our house.
Oh, was it? Well, the BBC used to major on, I don't know if you remember this, motocross. It was this amazing
Yeah,
sport where blokes on motorbikes went up muddy hills without falling off.
yes.
Dave Bickers
Dave
and Jeff
Bickers.
Smith were the sort of two world champions of this wretched sport that they put
Yeah,
on.
there was a motor car version of it as well, wasn't there? And I do remember they had to go as high as they could up a steep hill
Yeah,
in the mud,
yeah,
and it usually featured two sort of rural types, a husband and wife, often in the front seat. And when the car had almost come to a halt, in order to try and get an extra foot or 2 feet up the hill, they would bounce.
yes, bounce in the car.
And, well, you only watched it because it was the only thing on. But
I mean,
what
it's
else?
amazing how
Was there?
that and wrestling sticks in my mind. They must have had other sports on either channel. I mean,
Well, you used to get horse racing, did you not?
yes, horse racing first, and then as it got darker during the winter, the wrestling and the um, mud
Yes.
scrambling would take over. That's right. That's right.
The
It's bizarre. And then the matches had kicked off. Always at 3:00, full slate of matches at 3:00. There was no Sunday, no Friday, no Saturday. And I think the first Sunday game I went to was Spurs versus Nottingham Forest, but that was not until 1983, 84, something like that. So for the 60s and 70s, every team played on Saturdays at
yes.
3:00. It was fantastic.
But then they introduced the League Cup,
Yes.
and I heard the conspiracy rumor, and I like it, that the League Cup was purely invented as an additional source of income to the clubs because they'd have extra fixtures, obviously, and they were played on Wednesdays, I think Wednesday nights, partly because a number of clubs had been persuaded to buy floodlights, and they didn't really have any use for them because they only turned them on at about 4:20 in the afternoon on a Saturday from sort of late November onwards.
Yeah.
And they were saying, well, look, we've spent all this money on these floodlights. We need to get our money's worth out of them. So let's create another competition.
I had a slightly different take on that one in that it was the baby of Alan Hardacre, who was the president of the Football League, who detested whoever was the president of the Football Association,
I can believe
who
that.
controlled all the football. So he said, well, I'm going to have a tournament and I'm going to call it the League Cup. And it's only for Football League clubs, unlike the FA Cup, of course, which was for anybody, still is for anybody, as long as you have a roped-off pitch. The other interesting thing about the League Cup is that for a number of years, some of the top teams didn't enter.
That's right.
It was not obligatory. So I think
Yes.
Spurs didn't enter until 1967, and they promptly lost their first game to West Ham in the League Cup. So nothing really ever changes. The 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 teams that contested after the first final, now I am reaching back, something like Rochdale
Mm,
versus Norwich, I think, was the
mm,
first League Cup final
mm.
in '62, which I believe Norwich won, but don't anybody hold me to any of that. The big clubs didn't start coming in until the mid to late '60s because they thought, "Oh, it's irrelevant. We don't want to be mucking around on a cold Wednesday night up at Chesterfield or somewhere." But then the thing that really kicked it into gear, that this League Cup, was the first Wembley final in 1967 when third division team, then third division QPR, Queen's Park Rangers, played West Bromwich Albion and won 3-2, coming back from 2-0 down, I think, with the great Rodney Marsh um, up front and the even greater Mark Lazarus in the team, coming back from the dead yet again on one of his many spells at Queen's Park Rangers, Brentford, Fulham. Maybe not Fulham, but Orient. So that really propelled it into the sort of national consciousness, and then after that, all the big teams entered.
Yes.
Yeah,
But still to this day, it seems to me that if it holds any magic at all, it's the magic of managing to rescue the managerial job of a beleaguered manager of someone like Arsenal, who haven't won anything for 3 seasons. And so they go all out for the League Cup
yeah,
and make a big deal out of waving the trophy around as if to say, okay, now we've won something. It's not the league and it's not the Champions League and it's not even the FA Cup, but hey, we're going to need some Duraglic because we've got something that we're going to have to shine. Speaking about obscure, not obscure, about startup football competitions, do you have any recollection of something called, I think, the Intercities Fairs Cup? Does that
well,
ring a bell?
that had already, I think, no, it was still the Intercities Fairs Cup until about 1971,
That sounds
when
about right.
when it was rebranded as what was it rebranded as?
Well, you had the Champions League, which was then called just the European Cup,
European
and the
Cup,
Cup Winners'
Cup
Cup.
Winners' Cup.
Was it called the Fairs Cup?
It was the Fairs Cup, I think. Spurs were the
Yeah.
first winners, talking
Were
about
they?
moving around um, trophies. They were the first winners of that rebranded thing,
Right.
71, 72.
But if I remember correctly, and I might have got this completely wrong, when it started out, it was the Intercities, an
Yes.
Intercities tournament, and I think therefore London had to enter a side, and it did the whole thing didn't catch on
No.
because people support either their country or their club, but they struggle to support their city. And in any case, because of the preponderance of teams in London, London ought to have wiped the floor with everybody else, even Madrid
Yeah.
or Rome or, I don't know, Munich, because they only would have two, maybe two and a half teams. So it was never going to work. And indeed it didn't.
And you had to have a fair as well. It was a sort of industrial fair that you had to have.
Really? I didn't realize
That's
that.
why it's called the Intercities Fairs Cup.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I don't think
So,
anybody knew that apart from you.
and I think Birmingham also entered it,
Yep.
and they had a better chance of just getting two teams to agree to uh,
Yes.
a team. But I think Aston Villa refused, so it was actually Birmingham as Birmingham City entering there,
Mm.
1958 or something.
Threading our way nimbly back to what you would do on a Saturday
Yes.
if you hadn't got a home game and you couldn't go to an away game and Brentford were, I don't know, it didn't look likely, so you stayed at home. It wasn't miserable, was it? It was there was that sense of expectation that you knew your team were playing,
Yeah.
but if I remember correctly, neither Grandstand nor World of Sport gave you updates on latest scores.
They didn't. I think what they did was put out the halftime scores, and then left it at that. Talking of World of Sport, of course, they responded to Football Preview a year later in 1968 with On the Ball,
That's right.
hosted by Brian Moore, and that was Brian Moore's big break in television before he went on to do the big match and so forth. So yeah, they responded with On the Ball, and even in those days, I think ITV was seen as slightly edgier and, you know, less staid than
Less substantial, though, I think.
less substantial, but less staid.
Yes.
So, whilst Sam Leach was chuckling away his way through Football Preview, Brian Moore would kind of get a bit harder edged
Mm.
on the prospects of Darlington versus Rochdale or whatever it was. So I think from memory, I think they staggered the timings between themselves so one could watch Football Preview followed by On the Ball, or vice versa. I can't remember which way. But you could
Yes.
watch both, thankfully. That was good.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Deals
then
like that do.
half time arrived, and you were sort of, oh, there's the score. And then I think there was a commentary for the second half of a game on the radio,
Right.
but only one game.
Yeah.
And of course, the guys at the game had no knowledge of what was going on in other games. So unless it was a team that you're interested in, it was basically irrelevant to me anyway. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't particularly like listening to matches on the radio. It's very strange. It's like listening to tennis. Oh, there's a
Yes.
forehand. Oh, well, there's a backhand and another forehand. Yeah, great, thanks.
Well, if it's Dan Maskell, I can cope with it because he used to bring something. But football commentaries, I can't get the picture in my head from the words that are used by the commentator. But I did hear a story which I like, but again, I don't think there's anything in it, that the phrase "back to square one" was begun by a BBC commentator who suggested that listeners make a little grid on a piece of paper and divide it up into squares and number the squares according to what it's suggested in the Radio Times, so that
Wow.
instead of saying he passes the ball to the left back, he would say, and Jenkins passes it to Reynolds back to square one.
Well, well,
I'd want to
well.
believe it, but I don't.
It's a great story if it's true. It's a great story.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't like
So,
listening to
okay.
the radio. It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't even know that they did commentaries on the radio on a Saturday afternoon there.
I think they probably did back then. Again, at some point they introduced them, and until
Mm,
very recently,
mm,
the last 10 years, they would only now they sort of do the whole game and more than one game and switch between games, etc. But then it was just the one game, second half only, because
mm.
there was still this huge fear, even with that if you broadcast the whole game, people wouldn't go to the game. You
Yeah,
know that,
yeah.
and there's still that residual fear now because you cannot show the 3 o'clock games live on television.
Yeah, it's illegal, isn't it? Well, not illegal, but
Illegal.
it's
But
it's European ruling, I
which
think.
is why, of course, there are now only about 2 games on at 3 o'clock. The rest are
Yeah,
moved to 12:30 or
it's all wrong.
5:30, 8 o'clock, Friday nights, Monday nights. Anyway,
Going
so
back to those Saturday afternoon sports programs, I always felt that there was an interesting head-to-head between the ITV and the BBC packages, with their opening sequences,
ah,
which I found quite meaningful because it meant that the Saturday had begun proper.
yeah,
When you saw those light aircraft on ITV
World of Sport.
dragging
Yes,
banners saying
yes.
that And the music was much jauntier than I think it went something along the lines of, forgive me, I'm not a singer, but da 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 da. No, that's Ski Sunday.
Yes, that was. Anyway,
I
I
can't
don't
remember how
remember the
the
music, but I do remember the light aircraft.
well, the Grandstand opening sequence was a mosaic of different sports in
Yes.
black and white,
Yeah.
obviously, but the music was substantial. Word we've used a moment ago. What was it? Da 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 da. Was it that? Da 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 da. Was that the
It could have been. It
Grandstand
could have
theme?
been Grandstand, or was that
Yeah,
Sports Report? Did it?
it is. Yes, it's 5 o'clock, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
But
we missed that. We missed that, don't we? At five
yeah,
o'clock. That
yeah.
that moment in the afternoon. It's all over. Let's just round it up, beginning with the classified football results.
Before we just go there, there is the sort of anticipation at 20-5. It was always 20-5 because games didn't go on for 10-minute half times in those days. Games
Yes.
didn't go on very long. It wasn't 11 minutes of added time, whatever it was last night. So 20-5, that video printer would start. A teleprinter. It became the video. The teleprinter would start, and the reason that Coleman had to hold the microphone up because the teleprinter was a massive machine,
It was.
sort of rumbling away in the background.
Yeah.
And in the earliest days, they didn't have the little thing going along the bottom of the screen. He would just shout out the scores. Then some genius invented the ticker tape thing, and as you
Yeah.
say, yeah, you would sort of go east 5
Yes.
4 4
Or
far
far five.
5. A scoreline that never ever happened, but all of us remember it. And so you would be there desperately waiting for tea
Your team to come up. Yeah.
to come up.
Yeah, so there was a different type of excitement, and it was condensed
Yes.
into the teleprompter. All you could do from 3 o'clock in the afternoon onwards is just hope.
Yeah.
Imagine in your own head,
Yeah.
look, it's 5 to 3. They're running out now. By the way,
And then
as you know, I'm a great.
because this actually happened in the earliest days, apparently they used to get some of the scores wrong. And then they'd
Really?
correct them a bit later on in there. So whenever Spurs lost, which was even in those days, fairly, I'd refuse to believe it. I'd say no, they haven't. They've really
Yes.
won, and it'll be proved when the results come up. And of
Well,
course, I was
you never
dashed
know. All is not lost.
every time. I was dashed.
You mentioned the 10-minute half time, and as I am sadly a big fan of conspiracy theories. The more ridiculous, the more attractive I find them, I think, as long as there might be something in them. And I heard a rumor that the reason that half time was extended from 10 minutes to 15 minutes was because more and more women were attending football
Ah,
matches, and the queue for the solitary ladies' toilet at half time
yeah.
meant that some wives and girlfriends couldn't get back to their seats until 10 minutes into the second half.
Well,
And that was cheaper than but building more women's lavatories.
there
But
might be something to that. And I was just flashing back, and nowhere near as far, but I remember I used to go to the odd rugby international a bit later. This was sort of I've got to get this right. I'll get it right. But in rugby matches in those days, they never went off for half time. They all stood around. All the
I
blokes
did.
had a
Yes,
huddle,
yes,
um, had
yes.
a chat. The captain sort of exhorting people to get better and all that, and then they'd get on with it. So the women must have been going to those games in greater numbers than they went to football, but
Yes.
perhaps the facilities were slightly better. I don't know.
Well, let's just talk about half time for a second here, because one of the things you notice now in football is that the players rehydrate
Oh, well,
every opportunity they get.
yes.
I was at a Portsmouth match not long ago when the kickoff was delayed because the referee's
But yes,
walkie-talkie system didn't work. And so the kickoff was delayed by about 4 or 5 minutes. And during that time, a number of players went to the dugout
I know.
and rehydrated. All they'd done was walk out holding the hand of a mascot. Phew, I need a drink. But, but back in the day, um, we weren't allowed to drink. The guy who coached one of the junior teams that I played for, he banned liquid. He said it'll slow you down. So all we had at half time was the obligatory
Orange.
quarter of an orange, which you consumed hungrily because you did have a dry mouth and
Yeah.
you needed water. I suppose the rugby players, the Five Nations as it then was, just got themselves a quarter of an orange. I don't know.
Yeah, just digress slightly. I think this was in 1980, and England were playing Australia at Twickenham. And I said to my then girlfriend, now wife, Katie, said, do you fancy going to a game? She said, yeah. Anyway, come half time, all the lads were sort of huddling and all that. And this was the game when Erica Rowe streaked onto the pitch,
Absolutely.
displaying her tremendous assets.
One police helmet wasn't enough, was it?
No, and where famously Bill Beaumont was talking to the team, and none of them were listening to him. They were all looking over. He couldn't understand what was going on.
Yes.
Yeah. Katie says to me, does this always happen at rugby matches?
You could just turn up, could you, in those days at Twickenham?
Yeah. Oh,
Pay
yeah.
your money at the turnstile.
Yeah. Well, you could turn up, coming back to football, you could turn up at any football match.
Yeah, sure.
Pay money. So anyway, we digressed. But yeah, so half times for 10 minutes, teleprinter 20 to 5, and then you had the anxious wait till 5 o'clock when
You did.
the results came out. I think they were read out by the splendidly named Bob Danvers Walker
Correct.
to start
Yeah.
with. And you always knew who had won the game because of the intonation.
Yes.
You know, he'd say West Ham,
Yeah.
West Ham 2, Tottenham Hotspur.
Yes.
Or he'd
Yeah.
say West Ham 0, Tottenham Hotspur 2. So
Or
you
if
would
it was a
always
draw,
know
or
what
if it
was
was a draw,
happening.
Manchester United won, Manchester City
Yes, the draw.
won.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was always fun, which then led to the checking of the pools coupons.
Yes.
For any younger viewers and listeners, we should explain what the football pools were.
Well, you have a go at that.
Yes, well, they were a sort of forerunner of the National Lottery, except that they were privately owned by the very wealthy Littlewoods Group, John Moores. But I don't know when they started, perhaps just after the war or something. What one had to do, you had a coupon during the week with all the games listed down the left, and you had to pick 8 that you thought would be draws. And you would get 3 points for a draw, 2 points for a home win, 1 point for an away win. But your selection had to add up to 24. So if there weren't 8 draws, sorry, but you're not winning any money. But if you did have 8 draws, you were in with a chance of a lot of money, 24 points. And this, I think, Katie, we were discussing, she said to me, that used to bring the community together and involve more women sort of offline than they ever went to the match, because they were all interested in a little bit of a flutter in kind of to see whether their sides, their picks had done the trick. 24 points.
And the pools company, they hired lots of bods to go around and deliver the coupons to people's homes who wanted to play and also collect the coupons. And I
Two
don't know
and
what they did with
sixpence.
them then. I think you
Two
had
and
to get your coupon done by about Thursday
yeah. Well,
or
you could,
some
because
such.
you could post it off as well
Yeah, you could.
with your postal order, but I think it was two and sixpence or something like that
Something
to
like that,
enter,
yeah. Yes.
which again, for more recent views, is 12.5 pence in modern money. Uh,
And checking your pools coupon, that would get you through until the beginning of Doctor Who,
yes,
and then you
indeed.
would have to sit through the Cliff Richard show or the Lulu show, and then something else like Z Cars, I can't remember exactly, Softly, Softly, because now you're hoping you're gonna be allowed to stay up and watch the whole of Match of the Day.
Ah, yes. Just before we get to that, of course, there was the other great occurrence on a Saturday night would be to be dispatched to the shops to get fish and chips around
Absolutely.
5:30,
Yes.
by which time, astonishingly, in our area in Feltham, the evening news late edition was out with the football results, sort of 40
Yes.
minutes after, 50 minutes after the game had finished.
Yes.
Papers out, delivered to Feltham, which was about 20 minutes on the train from Waterloo, and you could pick up the football results and
Were there
one or
reports as
two.
well, or just the results in that they used to leave they'd print the newspaper, but they'd leave a little blank bit
Yeah,
down at the bottom, and there was a different typeface for the results, as I remember, as though they had to that was a whole very, very swift reprint of
yeah.
just that little bit of the paper, but
Well,
no
they used to
report.
bring out several editions of the evening news every Saturday. I mean, there'd be the sort of one at midday previewing the games, and
Yes,
a couple of others with other news, and then, as you say, the one with different typeface, Evening News, Evening Standard, would
yes,
race each other to get the results
yes.
out quickly.
And another topic that we could get to is things for sale on match day at the ground and around the ground, going back to 60s, 70s, 80s. Because since you mentioned the Evening News and the Evening Standard, we used to have a bloke who would come around about 20 minutes into the second half, and he'd walk around the touchline at Craven Cottage, and he was selling evening papers. And his shout was this, and I'll do it because it's burned into my head. Hit new, hit stand all the art times.
The half time. I,
Yeah.
I think I
Hit
think we could probably
news, hit
save half
standard,
times and
all the art.
the games for another episode of Match Day at the football.
Yes, absolutely.
But yes, so I was always eager to be dispatched to Abbott's newsagent, old man Abbott,
3 shops
behind,
down from that fish and chip shop you mentioned.
two shops down. So we'd get the fish and chips, we'd get the uh, possibly wrapped in the previous week's
Mhm.
classifieds. Who knows? Yes, we were allowed to have chips out of newsprint then, not anymore. And then get the paper, take it home. Then cut to um, Doctor Who. I th- I think Zed Cars and Softly Softly or midweek. I
They
would vote
were, they
for.
were. I was clutching at straws.
I would vote for the what you a program you would never see anymore on television, the black
Oh,
and
don't
white
even say the
minstrel
name.
show. The black and
You
white
were gonna
minstrel show.
it's illegal to even think of it.
Wouldn't this is where white men put on blackface to sing minstrel songs. Um,
Do you know it was the BBC's first ever winner of the Golden Rose of Montreux?
oh, was it?
It was. And how
My,
times have changed.
oh, I know. Yeah. Anyway, we'll gloss over that one and move on.
Yes.
And
But
then,
then
as you say, if you were allowed, if you were allowed to stay up to watch a match of the day, although
yeah.
that wasn't the original theme tune, and I
No?
can't recall the original theme tune, but they went to it after about a year. Yes, so 1964, match of the day.
Yeah, you see, doing quite a bit of work in broadcasting, that we would regularly hit this moment where with what are we going to call it? And we had a moment when we decided to think about what are we going to call Boots, Bovril, and Bother. And I used to argue that it doesn't matter that much because whatever your program is, the words that you use to name it morph slightly to fit whatever your program is. And the example I would always give is this: they still call it match of the day, but it just isn't.
No.
It's every Premier League match that was
Yes,
played
true, true.
that day,
Yeah,
and nobody goes, "Sorry, that's not correct." We know that the words "match of the day" mean what they mean,
yeah.
which is edited highlights of as much football as they can cram in, preferably starting with Manchester United and ending with Burnley,
I think the
because
first one was actually a single match. I think that was
yeah, it
Liverpool,
was.
Manchester United.
You're
Kenneth
right, it was.
Wolstenholme looking slightly dazed as he was allowed to actually broadcast on a match.
Yes.
But even then, it went fairly quickly to about 2 or 3 matches,
Yeah.
one of which was always from the lower leagues, which was really good. You would see, sometimes you would see the aforementioned Darlington 1, Rochdale 0, because I don't know how BBC's resources must have been as great then as they are now, and they would dispatch some hapless crew away from broadcasting house up to the north.
Yes.
And
Well,
and
they're great box tickers at the BBC, and they like to be able to they like to be held to account at interdepartmental meetings with questions like, "What are you doing to spread to give a spread of status to lesser, lower, different racial groups and different age groups and gender and all the rest of it?" And you have to have your argument up your sleeve when they would turn to the match of the day people and say, Where's your. I don't think the word diversity was used back
no,
then, but it was what they were barking at. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Well, diversity for them then was the different divisions, the 4 divisions.
Different
That's
divisions.
diversity. Uh, it,
Nowadays, you can notice if you're alert to these things, you can notice the number of times that people from different ethnic backgrounds are picked out for quick cutaways in the crowd.
ah,
Whether that makes the world a better place or not, I don't know. But they need to, certainly the BBC, and I suspect Sky and the rest of them feel it's the right thing to do. And so considerations like that often augment what would otherwise be just the pure coverage of the game because they want to tick as many boxes as possible. And on that subject, I do remember looking forward to Fulham versus West Ham one day because I knew that West Ham had just bought one of the first black players from one of the Caribbean countries. Clyde Best, his name was.
correct. Yeah.
And because we had been denied uh, seeing people of different ethnic minorities, even in Feltham, it was rare. I was looking forward to it just so that I could have the experience. And he was a big lumbering lad, but a very very skillful player.
Player still around, Clyde. He,
Really,
he, he was, yeah, I saw an article on him in the papers recently. But I think that
really.
is definitely for another program in
Yes.
terms of how we have gone from this all pearly white, every team called Smith, Jones,
Arbuthnot.
White, etc., to where we are today. One of the improvements in football
Absolutely.
we can talk about. So anyway, Mr. Boyd, we are approaching the magical 40-minute mark.
Right.
Notice, which we think is a sweet spot for people listening to us witter on
It's what I've heard. It's another
diverse
rumor I've heard.
subjects. So we'll bring this one to a close. saying that probably our next one will be the Saturday match day experience, when we actually got to go to a match, which was another big deal, obviously, for young kids. And say thanks to all for listening. And if you have any feedback or suggestions for improvement, or suggestions for topics, or just suggestions, then you can let us know via admin@bootsboverilandbother.com. So until the next time, it's goodbye from me and
Goodbye from me.
goodbye from Tom.